The name's Bond. Geriatric Bond. Where are my pills? We watched A View to a Kill, and this is what we had to say. The recovery of a microchip of the body of a fellow agent leads James Bond to a mad industrialist who plans to create a worldwide monopoly of microchips by destroying California's Silicon Valley. Strap in, folks. It's A View to a Kill. Here we go. Joining me this week are Paul Spirit, Andrew Grayson, Vanashri Vaplial, and our guest this week here to talk all about Isolation the series and Becoming Everything. We have Steve Leeds. Welcome to the show, Steve.
Hello, thank you for having me.
I mean, I almost feel like I need to apologise to you for asking you to be on this one with this film. My goodness.
No, not at all. I'm more than happy to be on this one.
At least it'll be a lot of fun to talk about, to be fair. So, as we said, you'll get to talk about all about your projects later on in the episode, but first you've got to help us with A View to a Kill. All right. So, just to delay talking about the film for a little bit, and for my own personal interest, I'd like to actually just ask everyone, first of all, who is your first James Bond and who's your favourite James Bond? For me, I'm pretty sure, I think it's Roger Moore, because I watched all the James Bond films when I was young. I really loved the James Bond films when I was a child. So I think for me, it was Roger Moore, because I think those are the ones that were on the most and repeated on TV the most when I was a kid, so it must have been him. Favourite Bond, I think, and it's very close between two, I think, but I think I've got to go with Big Sean. Got to go with Sean Connery, I think. Just quintessential Bond. And I think what he brought to the character was the kind of the dry Scottish wit, the kind of asides and the one-liners. I think he was the one who delivered those the best of that aspect of the character. And I think everyone else kind of they do it too, and they kind of bring their own stuff to the part. But I feel like they're always emulating him on that aspect of the character. Yeah. I think he's my one. Daniel Craig, though, very close second now. I think Daniel Craig very close second. I love what he's done with the character. So, Steve, I'll come to you first. First Bond, favourite Bond.
Do you know what? It's such a hard one. You can kind of pick the best of everyone, I think. For me, I kind of agree with what you've said with Sean Connery there. Roger Moore, obviously, especially this film was the year that I was born. So by the time I kind of knew what James Bond was, that kind of had a very special moment for me, because it was 85. I think he tips it for me, Roger Moore. I think he just brought a different kind of class to it. That, growing up, when I kind of visualised James Bond, it was always him. But then you've got arguments for Sean Connery. I think he was just, he did something that nobody else did with James Bond, I think. And then you've got, I do like Daniel Craig. I didn't want to like him as James Bond. And I think the way that they done the films was very, it went more Hollywood with him, which I don't think necessarily is a bad thing, because that's what our time is now. That's where movies are going and things. So I think I'm excited to see his new version of the new version that's coming out, because I think he might tip it for me as the best James Bond if he does a good job.
Yeah.
And my friend actually worked on the set of this one, and he said he was incredible.
Yeah.
So I'm quite excited to see this one.
Yeah, I'm sure it'll be good. Yeah, I think it'll be a nice swan song for him for sure for his last one. Yeah, definitely. I mean, the trailer looks amazing, so I think it will be a good one. Yeah.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, they had quite a lot of problems on the set as well, didn't they? They had so many, kind of things go wrong. So if they've managed to pull it off and do as good as what the trailer looks, then I think it's going to be a pretty good film.
Awesome. What about everyone else? V, what about you? Who was your first Bond and who's your favourite Bond?
So I was born in the 80s as well, and my favourite Bond is Roger Moore. Obviously clue as to why I chose this film. Roger Moore, to me, I don't know, he is who I saw on TV a lot growing up, because he used to repeat films to death during that time on television, and James Bond was one of them. And Roger Moore was he's a gentler, more kind of goofy kind of carry on James Bond to me. I think he was gentler really, whereas Sean Connery to me was, a bit more rougher with the ladies. James Bond still is a character, is still kind of a sexist character, and he is a bit sleazy, but I don't know, Roger Moore kind of tamed it a little bit, and he was just a bit more gentle. And also Roger Moore was just such a nice guy in real life, and I think it comes across when he plays James Bond. There's so many stories of him just being really nice, to fans who can talk to him, and some of his interviews as well, where he's talking about filming and such, he comes up with some really funny quotes, and he just seems like a nice guy.
Yeah. Andrew, what about you?
I distinctly remember, I think my first James Bond was Pierce Brosnan, because I can remember the N64 game GoldenEye came out. So that film was on non-stop, but I did even the old Sean Connerys, and as you say, Roger Moore was on constantly. So I remember watching them with my grandpa when I was really young. As far as my favourite, I think I'm similar to you, Craig, that it's really close, but I go the other way. I love Daniel Craig. I think what Daniel Craig's done with James Bond is similar to what Nolan did with Batman for me, in the sense of he's kind of made it more gritty and more, not lifelike, but it's just a darker thing. Is like you say, as V was saying about how it was kind of carry on, and you had the kind of lightness to it, whereas Daniel Craig's is more down to earth. It's more Bourne-like. You've got films like John Wick, and you've got the Bourne Identity and stuff like that. They went for that kind of harder edge, and he is in my favourite James Bond film of all time as well. So I'm going to go with Daniel Craig as my favourite.
Cool, awesome. So when I ask this next question to Paul, I'm going to also assume that, Paul, you have seen the James Bond film. I'm just going to, hopefully he has. We don't know. Paul, who is your first and favourite?
Well, I'm a little disgusted, actually, because my first James Bond is also my favourite James Bond. My first James Bond was Pierce Brosnan.
He's your favourite?
He is my favourite, and I'm a little disgusted at the lack of Pierce Brosnan love here. It's
he's my second.
He is the man. GoldenEye, the world that tomorrow never dies. No, tomorrow the world is not enough. And all those, I love those ones. They're great. 90s pure hardcore action all the way through. I find Pierce Brosnan, Daniel Craig is a close second for me, because like you said, Andrew, I love the gritty nature, and Casino Royale is a very close to being my favourite. But there's just something about a Pierce Brosnan one. It brings all the campiness almost, but not quite as camp as the 80s, and a little bit more grit, but not nearly enough as grit as Daniel Craig. So it's sort of in between, while still also being ridiculous. So that's my bro. I love Pierce for that sort of little bit of the mixture, and Sean Bean in GoldenEye as well is just.
Yeah. No George Lazenby fans. No one mentioned him. You know something that's really fascinating about that, because the popular culture, the studios and stuff, they have somehow managed to twist the narrative about George Lazenby, which is incredible. Because if I mentioned George Lazenby, everyone's like, "Oh, he was shit, wasn't he? He did one film and he was gone." I think that's what everyone kind of thinks. But there's this really, really interesting documentary. Anyone who's a fan of James Bond, check out a documentary called Becoming Bond, and it's like a narrative documentary about George Lazenby. And actually, George Lazenby gets interviewed in it as well. And it's just a story of his life about being this, he was an Australian model and just got plucked from obscurity to replace Sean Connery when Sean Connery had enough. And he was successful. That film did well, and everyone loved him as James Bond. But he just said, "You know what? The showbiz life is getting a bit much for me. I'm going down a dark path here. It's not for me." And he just took us, and he was just like, "Nah, I'm going." But the narrative's just been twisted over the years. Make it seem like he's the bad one. He's the one no one talks about. He's the one that you never see on the TV anymore. It's honestly fascinating documentary, Becoming Bond. Check it out.
Is that why they went back to Sean Connery?
Yes, because
I wondered that when I was when I was looking through the list of them all being released, I was going, why is there one in between? So obviously that's the reason.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, he just simply went, you know what? It's not for me. And because he was offered the sequel, he was offered to do another one, but he just said no. He was offered, like, I think millions and millions of pounds to do a sequel, but he just said, nah, I'm done. And then they've got back Sean Connery. They had to convince Sean Connery to come back to reprise for another couple movies. Yeah,
it is crazy.
Very interesting. Becoming Bond.
Yeah, I'm going to watch it. It is quite strange because you hear about the kind of role. It must be so intense because Daniel Craig didn't want to do the new one, did he? No, he said, I'm not doing another James Bond. Obviously, figures talk and they kind of come to some sort of agreement. But, there must be something there because from a viewer, you'd think that's the most dream role to play. So for all of these actors to be at that kind of level, I know obviously after years of doing it, but to have even done it once, you are looked at by the whole world then, aren't you? Everybody knows James Bond. So it must be quite intense to take on a role like that and then to keep that up. Yeah, so I can kind of understand why people do kind of want to step away from that, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. Right, okay. I think we've avoided talking about A View to Kill for long enough. So we're better because there's so much to talk about, so we'll have to get going with it. So we'll go over to V first. V, this is your pick for the film club. So tell everyone why this film.
Well, we were supposed to get Bond 25 this month, which obviously didn't happen due to circumstances, due to COVID. So I thought, what better time to go over some old Bond classics, to revisit them. And as I said before, my favourite Bond is Roger Moore. And I chose View to a Kill because it is the one that I used to see on television a lot when I was growing up, and it's just got a lot of nostalgia associated with it for me. And I since read, and after watching it again, I can see maybe why. It's Roger Moore's lowest scoring on IMDb. I believe it got 6.4. I think one of the reasons why is because Roger Moore older in this. He's 57. So it's not as slick. The action scenes, as you probably could tell, were a bit disjointed, and he's getting on a bit. And sometimes the dynamics between him and the other female co-stars is a bit. But aside from that, I think it's got some good points to it. I think it's got a great villain, Max Zorin, Christopher Walken in it. It's got a great plot line. Silicon Valley. Who would have thought that? And also, it's also got the magnificent Grace Jones in it. Who for me steals the show. And also, it's got a cracking soundtrack by Duran Duran, and an even more fascinating music video associated with that. So yeah, I thought it'd be a good one just to bring to the table and see what you guys all thought of it as well, get your perspective.
Yeah. We've got very different views on this film, very, very different views. So I'm looking forward to my bit. So, Paul, was this a student special for you? Or had you seen the film before? And what are your first thoughts, Paul?
This is 100% Stirrat special, genuine, certified.
Woo! Ring the bell, ring the bell.
Ring the bell. So I didn't know what I was in for when I was watching this. But you know what? I came out the other side enjoying what I saw.
Oh, no.
I didn't quite always understand why things were happening, but I was like, you know what? I'm watching a James Bond film. I've seen about 3 chases so far. There's been skiing, horse riding, a fire engine chase. It's like, and then there's like all kinds of, that he like lays women in about seconds in this one. He has a conversation and then it gets down to it, and it's like, I know he's fast, but come on. And then so I think you get your bang for your buck with this one. For your James Bond, your bang for your James Bond buck.
No pun intended. Lovely. Andrew, what about you?
I think this is the first time I've seen it. I'm rather hazy with what James, but it doesn't stick out in my mind, so I think it is the first time I've seen it. When I look at my notes, I have a lot more notes at the beginning than I do at the end, so that makes me think that I enjoyed it. Like, I think I must have started going, oh, I'm quite enjoying this, and then by the end I was going, fucking hurry up, man! Like, we've got stuff to do here. I think I'm going to fall more on your side, Craig. It was a struggle near the end. There were parts that I did like take from it that I was like, oh, I like that bit. That bit was fun. But for the most part, yeah, I get why it's not a favoured James Bond movie.
Steve, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, the reason that I kind of picked to be on this episode was, A View to a Kill, was because it's such an iconic brand, James Bond. So you're always going to have so many mixed reviews, and it's nice to be able to sort of hear other people's views on, a certain film. For me, yeah, do you know what was weird actually was watching it back now, because now obviously they've put it into HD as well. So it's quite strange to see all these old cameras, now having HD over them. Which I thought they, considering the time frame of, it was in 85 or 86, the fact that it still looks quite relevantly new, it doesn't look like a complete 80s film, if that makes sense. I think they were ahead of their time for what they done then. But I think I agree with you guys. They tried to cram everything in, and it was a bit too much. I think the opening with, the skiing is genius. I think they filmed that and went, what else can we fit in? And it just snowballed. And yeah, I think by the end it's a little bit like, come on now, you need to get on with this.
My first thoughts are really, I'm annoyed. I'm annoyed that I had to watch the film. I'm annoyed that I had to spend £3.50 to rent the film. I feel like the James Bond estate owes me some money back, personally. I mean, basically, I'm annoyed actually generally that I've invented this show in the first place, because I've done this to myself. I mean, this is the first of many films where it's going to be absolute torture, but that's the way it goes. I mean, for Princess Bride, I think this is the last episode. I wrote, I think, less than a page of notes. For this one, I wrote a goddamn dissertation, man. This was mental. I mean, the film was so long. It was so long. We spent 45 minutes talking about horses. Roger Moore, you said he was 57. If you told me he was 67, I would have gone, all right, yeah.
I've literally wrote the exact same thing down.
Yeah. He looks about 70. I mean, and the fight scenes. The fight scenes was like watching a bunch of old men at last orders outside of Wetherspoons. It was absolutely ridiculous. So yeah, I can see why this one is one of the worst that's rated Bond film wise, for sure. So as I said, there's a lot to talk about as we're talking this. I think the only way to do this film is we need to just break it down. We need to go scene by scene and just talk it through. So as every James Bond film starts with an opening, let's talk about the opening scene. Paul, what do you think about the opening scene for this one?
Well, what I have to say about this film, for the opening and the ending, it pretty much, you see the lion roar and then you're in. Like there was no slow crawl opening credits, which you sometimes get with 80s and 90s films, but you were straight into this, and it was, he's basically, you cover up to him just scraping snow off of his pal's face. And for some reason, this guy just died, doesn't seem to have any bullet wounds. He's froze to death with microchips. But the thing that really got me was, I mean, I'll come to this point in a second, actually, because, you start off and it's pretty much classic Bond. It's great because he's skiing down. They've got the guys chasing them. They've got machine guns while they're skiing. He jumps on a sleigh. There's a bit of an obvious screen background at parts, but that's part of the fun. You know, he's like, you're obviously just in. But then, so I loved it. And then I thought, is that a toy helicopter? Because at one point it kind of looks like, I'm like, and then there's just this huge explosion. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure that was a toy helicopter. But the thing that I loved the most about the opening is, you know, it's pretty action-packed straight from the get-go. But he gets to the submarine, he gets inside, and he meets his supermodel submarine steerer. And he's like, by the way, while I was fleeing for my life and picking up this microchip from my dead pal, I got this bottle of vodka. Want to split it? I'm like, where did you get this vodka? I mean, you were just I presume you went from the submarine to your pal's corpse. So where did you get this vodka? Because he brought it out of his bag. I was like, okay. And then within seconds of pouring the vodka, he says, oh, and then he hits some sort of control panel and the submarine apparently shakes. And then this woman just falls onto his lap and says, oh, well, while you're down there, you know, don't mind me, 67-year-old Bond, you know. So I loved it, but I was like, whoa, okay, we're in a James Bond film.
Yeah, you're right. It was your everything you want from a James Bond opening that you usually would get. It was all those things and more. I would say. I mean, actually, this one actually the skiing that's really etched in my brain. That opening as a James Bond film. I remember that. I as a kid, I remember watching that. I remember liking it as well. When it was, that was awesome. But what I don't remember, is the Beach Boys coming in.
The soundtrack, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I just went, why? It was fine. Like stunt, bad stuntman Roger Moore on a green screen. Aside, like it was fine. But you know, the music I thought was great. But I just couldn't get my head around why you would do a hard cut to the California Girls song and then hard cut back again. Oh, anyway, I just that'd be. But then again, I suppose that kind of introduces you to the kind of film you're going to be watching. I suppose, you know, definitely.
You knew what you were in for.
Exactly. Oh, yeah. So
I was going to say, I feel sorry for the girl in the submarine where he was like, it's 5 days to Alaska. Like, oh, jeez.
I've only got this bottle of vodka for those 5 days, so.
I think that in the first 5 minutes, trust me.
So
I had the same kind of notes, man. The California, that when that kicked in, I was like, what movie is this? Because like, again, like I was the same as Paul when it started. I was like, oh, quality, we're straight in with some action. We've got traditional James Bond opening, he's skiing, there's machine guns, there's all that. And I guess it's because he was like, I mean, it was snowboarding, but he was like surfing on the thing. That's the only thing that I could go, right, maybe that's why. But I just thought it was so strange. And then V's touched on it as well, man. It's like, it's not that he's old, but he's so old in comparison to these women that it's not unnoticeable. Like, it's like really like front and sit. You're like, oh man, it's like my grandpa on the pole, man. You're like, oh.
Yeah. Apart, one of the fun facts for this film is that the reason why Roger Moore gave up Bond after this movie was because he was older than Tanya Roberts, who's the main Bond woman in this film. He was older than her mother. So
yeah, he was horrified.
Yeah. He was like, you know what? It's time. Let's pass on.
I mean, I'm going that far. That decision should have happened at least 5 years before. I mean, like, there's at least 2 or 3 films there that he could have just dodged.
So after our opening scene, we obviously have our opening, you know, the music and the Bond theme songs. Obviously, this is the only Bond song in the US to get to #1. It is obviously by Duran Duran, very 80s. I mean, the thing itself is incredibly 80s. I mean, I wrote down, I feel like I'm on an acid trip right now because it was insane. It just, if you want to show me something that was from the 80s, show me that. That's exactly that. And I would say, yeah, definitely. That just totally epitomises everything about the 80s right there. Steve, what was your first thoughts on the opening music sequence?
Yeah, the music sequence. I agree with everything you guys have said. Definitely the whole first scene. As soon as it came on, it brought back memories. You know, I do remember that being a very iconic part of James Bond was the skiing. Obviously, I don't remember it looking and sounding quite like it did. And yeah, it just jars. The music with it kind of jars a little bit, and it's quite surreal because I know we've moved on. You know, it's 30 something years later, but I'm quite surprised that they, even back then, especially being James Bond, you know, it wasn't their film. So to have allowed that to kind of just happen, it was like they just said, "Oh, we've got this song. This will be good here," and they've just gone, "Oh, yeah, we can't think of anything else. Bung that over the top." So yeah, it did jar for me. But I do like that first scene. For me, that kind of, it peaks there. That film actually peaks at the beginning, and it doesn't kind of go anywhere else apart from down, really, for me.
Much like the skis, yeah. So, V, were you a fan of the Duran Duran song to open up the film?
I like Duran Duran. No, I do like that song.
Don't be ashamed of that.
I mean, you know, the opening scene with the women dancing and that kind of thing is always going to be tacky. It's just what James Bond is like, especially in the 80s, where they've got like silhouettes of women like dancing and some kind of like, it looked like some kind of seedy strip club where they ski at the same time and turn into ice and things. It was bizarre. But yeah, I mean, out of a lot of Bond movies, that song has to be the song that is stuck in my head the most, and that is definitely a success on their part. And it did get to #1, so in the US.
Hi. I remember, I as a kid, because I was into James Bond as a kid. I remember being taken to a live orchestra thing that was happening in the town where I grew up, and it was all the James Bond songs done by an orchestra. I don't remember that one. I don't remember A View to a Kill. I don't remember them doing that. Like for me, a James Bond theme song has got to be this kind of like big band kind of, you know, crescendo kind of song. So I was sitting there thinking, this doesn't feel like an opening to a James Bond film to me. But yeah, that's just my personal opinion, to be honest. I mean, I think the song itself actually probably is all right. It's just I didn't feel like it matched.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I think it is the thing where, because my dad was telling me about it, I think Duran Duran were the biggest band at that time, so it makes sense that they did the Bond theme, but at the same time, like even now, like when you hear, oh, such and such is doing it, you're going, right, but they don't really do that kind of music. It has to fit James Bond, whereas I think James Bond fit round Duran Duran, because the first thing I say is I went, oh, this is very 80s. It didn't recognise the song, but I was going, if you told me this was Duran Duran, I'd believe you. If you told me it was a James Bond song, I wouldn't. Do you know what I mean?
It is sort of a way that I was kind of watching. I was like, the song itself, I could kind of take or leave. It wasn't my favourite James Bond theme. And I'm like thinking, is this called View to a Kill because they wanted it, or because the Duran Duran song was called A View to a Kill? Like, I'm not really sure.
Oh, why is it called A View to a Kill?
Because Christopher Walken says it.
Yeah, he doesn't even say the full line.
No,
he says half, and Thingley says the other half. Grace Jones.
It doesn't make any sense because they try. I think on 3 or 4 occasions to make the title make sense. They do it in the song. In the song, they have different lines that leads to A View to a Kill. Doesn't make any sense. When they say it on the helicopter, it still doesn't make any sense. It's called A View to a Kill. Oh, sorry. Honestly, I think I'm a bit grouchy because this is the second one of these I've done in the space of 2 days. But I was honestly really excited by this film. I really am. Okay. So I think we need a break. I think we need a break from having a wee chat about A View to a Kill. So let's play our first game, if that's all right. So, Andrew, over to you for Live and Let High or lower.
There we go. So guys, this is a really simple game. I'm going to take you through the years of James Bond releases, and all you have to do is you need to tell me whether the IMDb rating is higher or lower than the predecessor film. So I'll keep score for you guys. Really simple, and we'll just get cracking. So the first James Bond film that was released was Dr. No in 1962 with an IMDb rating of 7.2. What I need you to tell me is, From Russia with Love, is that higher or lower?
Higher.
That's a fan favourite, that one. That's a fan favourite, I think. I'm going to say higher.
Yeah, it's got to be higher.
So higher all round. You are correct. It scored 7.4. I think this game will get a lot easier when we get to the Daniel Craig section, because I think it's a pretty given what those films are thought of. So the next film in 1964 was released was Goldfinger. Was that higher or lower than From Russia with Love?
Lower.
Lower.
Yeah, lower. Let's go lower.
Oh,
Lower.
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 You're all incorrect. It is actually higher. Goldfinger scored a 7.7. It was actually one of the higher rated ones. So move straight on in 1965, Thunderball.
Lower. Lower.
Lower.
It is indeed lower. It scored 7 on the nose. So move on to 1967, You Only Live Twice. Higher or lower?
That one is
I'd have said higher.
Higher.
Lower.
higher. Higher.
Steve's higher, Paul's higher, Craig, you're higher as well?
Yeah.
And V, you're lower? V with a point, it scores a 6.9.
Wow.
We then move on to Her Majesty's Secret Service, the one and only with Mr. George Lazenby. Is that higher or lower than Only Live Twice with 6.9?
Higher.
I'm going to say lower because of the whole thing I talked about at the start. I feel like they would have pushed it down personally, but I don't know.
Yeah, I'll go for higher, but I see what you're saying there. I kind of agree with that, but I'm going to go higher, I think.
Lower.
It is lower. Paul, did you say lower as well?
No, I said
You said
higher.
higher. V is running away with it. She is showing her skills in the James Bond world. So we then move back on to Mr. Sean Connery's final movie, Diamonds Are Forever, in 1971.
Higher. It's got to be.
Higher.
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 It's actually lower than Her Majesty's Secret Service.
Wow.
Slightly, it's only 6.6, but it is slightly lower. Then move on to Mr. Roger Moore's first movie, Live and Let Die, in 1973. Is that higher or lower than Diamonds Are Forever with a 6.6?
Higher.
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 It is indeed higher with a 6.8, narrowly higher, but it is higher nonetheless. We then move to The Man with the Golden Gun. Higher or lower?
Low.
Oh,
Lower.
that's Christopher Lee, so higher.
Lower.
That's my favourite. That's not my favourite of all of them, actually. I'm going to say higher because I like it.
Yeah, I'm going higher.
It is indeed higher with a 6.9. Again, ever so slightly, just higher and no more. So we move on to The Spy Who Loved Me in 1977.
Lower.
Lower.
I'm actually going to go higher. I like this film.
It wasn't as well received as its Austin Powers
No, it wasn't.
successor.
Well, I'm afraid you're wrong because it was received much higher, as Steve has said, with a 7.1. So we're back up into the sevens. We then move on to 1979 with Moonraker. Is it higher or lower than a 7.1?
Well, Moonraker, everyone hated Moonraker, didn't
Higher.
they?
Yeah, I'll
Lower.
say lower.
I'm going to say lower.
Lower.
You are all right. It is lower. These are the ones that I always remember, though. These are the ones, like, see, for me,
Yeah.
these were the Bond villains when you had Odd Job and Jaws and things like that. So it kind of makes me a wee bit sad that they're not getting as high scores, because these are the ones that stick out in my head. So we've got on to 1981 For Your Eyes Only. Is that higher or lower than a 6.3 with Moonraker?
Higher.
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 Well done, guys. Of course, it is higher with a 6.7. So we are now moving to 1983 with Octopussy. Is that higher or lower than a 6.7?
Higher.
Higher.
Higher, yeah.
With a name like that.
We then move on to our film of choice, A View to a Kill. Is it higher or lower?
Lower.
Lower.
V mentioned
Lower.
earlier, it was a 6.4, so scores all round. We move to 1987, The Living Daylights, higher or lower than a 6.4?
Higher.
Higher.
Yep, it is indeed higher. It is a 6.7. We then move to License to Kill in 1989.
Got a license to kill.
Higher than lower than a 6.7.
Lower.
I'd say higher.
No.
Higher.
Higher.
Oh, V, you shouldn't have changed your mind.
No,
It was
lower.
6.6.
It was peer pressure.
Where's the daughter of love?
We then move to Paul's favourite. It is Pierce Brosnan in GoldenEye 1995, the longest wait.
Higher.
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 Yeah, it's going to be higher.
It is indeed much higher. It got a 7.2, so that scores all round.
GoldenEye.
We then move to 1997 for Tomorrow Never Dies.
Don't know this
Lower.
Lower.
one. Lower.
I'm going to go higher.
What are you on, Steve? What?
I quite liked
I
it.
liked
It's
it,
good, but
I
it's not
think it got lower.
GoldenEye. No, it was. It was.
Oh,
lower.
it was, yeah, of course, yeah.
6.5.
Andrew,
Was it?
I'm going to have
Was that?
to cut you off, I'm afraid. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll finish off the higher or lower game and talk more about A View to a Kill. See you soon. Welcome back to part 2. We are playing Live and Let Higher or Lower with Andrew. Andrew, where were we? Take us on.
We left off in 1997 with Tomorrow Never Dies as a 6.5. We move on to The World Is Not Enough in 1999. Is it higher or lower than a 6.5?
Can't be much.
Higher.
Can't be any more if it's lower.
Lower.
High.
I'm going to go higher.
So Steve's higher, V's higher. Paul, you're lower.
Lower.
And Craig, you're lower as well.
Higher.
You're higher. Paul, the only one that scores,
Oh.
it was
Oh.
Joint, the worst James Bond movie on IMDb.
Lies. It's
We
lies.
move on to 2002 for Die
All
Another Day.
lies.
Die Another
that's
Day is
good- that's
higher or
gonna be
lower than
higher.
6.4.
Higher.
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 I
I think
love
it's
that.
terrible.
It's lower, guys. It's 6.1. This is the
Wow.
worst movie of
Wow.
James Bond.
I don't believe you. I
It's the one I
don't
remember
believe
the
you.
most. It's the one I remember the most, actually.
Yeah, with Halle Berry. I'm the same. We then move on to Mr. Daniel Craig in 2006. Is it higher or lower than 6.1?
Higher.
Higher.
Probably
Yeah, I'll go
the obvious one of the day. Yes, it is higher with a score of 8. We are moving on to 2008 with Quantum of Solace. Higher or lower?
Lower.
Lower.
It is indeed lower. As I said, the Daniel Craig ones are pretty simple. Then we move to Skyfall in 2012. Higher or lower than a 6.6?
Higher.
Higher.
It is indeed higher. And finally, Spectre.
Lower.
Lower, I think.
Lower.
Lower.
It is indeed. Now, after all that, we are at a dead heat. It is a score draw. So what I'm going to do is ask you to tell me what you think the score is for Spectre. You all said lower, which it was. So it's lower than 7.7. The closest person will get the win.
7.5.
7.4.
He's priced us right, yeah.
I'm going to go for a 7 on the nose.
6.9.
And V with the win. It is 6.8, and Banashri is the winner. That is all from Live or Let Higher or Lower. Well played, guys.
Thanks, Andrew. Thanks,
Thank
Andrew. Well done to V. Congratulations to V. Well done,
Thanks.
well
Do I
done.
get a prize?
Well,
Send you another bow tie.
yeah, exactly. So let's carry on with A View to a Kill. So we left off after the theme music, after the Chekhov gun of the robot dog in the briefing room, which we can talk
My
about.
favourite
We can
Chekhov
talk about
gun
later
ever.
on. We can talk about that later on. We move on to Paris, the lovely Paris, which we've talked about many times already on the show, and Moulin Rouge, of course. But we went to Paris, and for me, I felt it was a situation where the writer and the director got into the room and was like, right, How can we help the audience realise that we're in Paris? I know. Establish a shot of an Eiffel Tower. Correct. What's next? Fancy restaurant. Yes. Okay, more French, more French. Put the restaurant in the Eiffel Tower. Yes, we've done it. Who's he having lunch with? The most obviously French man in the world. Correct. And then finally, of course, butterflies. Obviously. So, honestly, that scene, I think that might be my favourite scene of the film. It was just absolutely mental. Apparently, the butterfly thing was like an actual act. That was an actual thing. That was like a phenomenon in France at that time. It was like this thing where this woman did a thing with butterflies. No idea why that was popular. But anyway, what did anyone else feel about Paris? Our trip to Paris in this film.
Well, just right after the butterfly, my favourite French trope was the taxi driver just casually sipping his wine.
I've got a whole bit on the taxi driver. It was to see what Steve said earlier, right? He says about how it's all been changed into like high definition. Does that cause problems with like voice syncing, or was it just people that had been dubbed?
No, that would have been them just being dubbed.
Oh, there was some awful dubbing in this.
Yeah.
Like your French guy was awful, and then the French taxi driver after Bond nicks his car, it's oh my car. Oh, I'm going to so bad. It was so bad. It was brilliant. That was my favourite bit. That was my favourite thing.
But why? The thing was, why would he shout that in English? He said,
Yeah.
Oh, classic.
An interesting fact, actually, I think it was this one. 2 of the crew actually got sacked for doing some sort of jump off of the Eiffel Tower or something. That is right, isn't it? I might have just made that up, but yeah, that always stuck out for me. I always remembered that. I always remembered hearing that.
Because like they didn't get to do the stunt. One of the guys didn't get to do a stunt, and they did it in 1 jump instead of 2.
Yeah.
So one of the guys didn't get to do it. So we thought, all right, I'm just going to do it anyway. So he jumped off.
As you do.
What do we think of this May's escape in that scene?
First.
On you go, Paul.
Well, I was just going to say, first off, she murders someone with a fishing hook.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, what? I mean, a fishing hook, maybe about this size, and she must have swung it so hard she penetrated his brain to kill him, because he doesn't go he just falls over straight into his suit.
Yeah. Wasn't it also like it was on his cheek as well, wasn't it? It wasn't even anywhere. It was like here, so I was like, okay, that's.
What I also loved about that scene was when she comes in, and also the guy in the GIMP costume that's doing the butterfly stuff. She comes in, and she with her own fishing rod, I might add, very prepared, I must say. And she comes in, and then it's like the guy's like an actor who's like, "This is my big moment, hey!" And then have that kind of tussle. That was absolutely amazing.
But there was times and scenes like this where it was like, and I understand it was a very different James Bond to the Daniel Craig version, but it was stuff like he's supposed to be this like he's supposed to be this big but he get fucking tangled with a fishing pole. Like there's like things and he tangles up. I'm going, mate, you're James Bond. Like, and then as well, like when he gets his car, it's like this gets the big car chase, and you're like, this is what James Bond's about. We think Aston Martin's, we think of this. He's in like a Fiat Punto that drives through some sort of bar, whaps the roof off, somebody rear ends him, halves the car, and he's just this wee guy, wee old Roger Moore and 2-wheeled motor. I'm going, oh mate, you've seen better days, man.
It's a metaphor for the film.
Yeah.
I thought it was funny when he's actually chasing her up the Eiffel Tower, and which he's doing very badly as well. Like he's like stumbling all over the place. And but I
wrote down Roger actually looks like he couldn't get up those stairs.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Needed a stair lift.
Carry on, B.
But she's like, so they've had this big chase, and she's obviously seen him at the dinner table talking to Aubergine. I don't know what his name was. The other guy, and he's like, And then later on, you'd have thought she'd know who he is. And later on in this movie, she's like an hour in or whatever, after seeing this guy, she's like, he was the guy in the Eiffel Tower. Like,
yeah,
he was chasing you up the stairs, and he obviously recognized her. You know, he said he didn't really know who she was, this masked murderer. And it was, that was just ridiculous. And also, there's a line that the aubergine guy. When he is talking to James Bond and the woman's doing the butterflies, you know, doing her act, and he says this line, and it's like, another one we can add to the collection. Like saying, I'd like to add her to my collection. And like even James Bond is a little bit like, he's even taken back by that comment, because that was just like too much for him.
I've been around the block, pal, but that's a bit too far.
Yeah. Please bring a bottle of vodka.
Yeah. I think what got me with that scene is when he chases her up the Eiffel Tower. Obviously, he looks like he can't get up to the top anyway, but he's this, you know, sort of best spy in the world. And he gets to a certain point, and then he looks around like, where's she gone? You know, he's completely confused, James Bond, that she's jumped off of the Eiffel Tower, you know.
And jumped off in the most, you know, conspicuous way that you could possibly, a big massive bumblebee parachute.
Yeah.
Into a speedboat. You just killed someone. Like, be a bit more subtle. Honestly. And also, why is Christopher Walken driving the speedboat? I mean, like, this guy is he's like a French, well, what he is another matter, but he's supposed to be a French industrialist, and he's in France in a speedboat. So he's like the most recognizable man in France, just driving in a speedboat, and she jumps off in a parachute landing, and then, we can get away with murder, apparently. Honestly. As I said at the start, this film really annoyed me. More than The Condemned. It annoyed me more than The Condemned, and that's because
that's a win. That is a win.
The thing with The Condemned is you were expecting. I got what I expected with The Condemned, but with this one, I like James Bond films, but this one was just diabolical. Speaking of Christopher Walken, what do we think of his villain? I know V, you've already said that you enjoyed it, but what do we think of Max Zorn?
I don't know if I'm slow, but I wrote down like we get like over an hour in, and I'm like, what is his plan? Like, what did he want to do? Because my biggest gripe with this was, and I don't know if it's just, I don't think it's because I'm not a fan of horse racing, because there's loads of it. Like, I'm not a fan of F1, but there's a couple of F1 films that I've watched that I absolutely loved. But I'm going, what was the deal with an hour at Chepstow? Like, why were we at the horse racing for so long? For it to then be like, see why that horse was kicking up a fuss, it's a microchip, and then he moves on to Silicon Valley. I'm like, that's just 2 films. Like, you easily could have, if you cut most, even do like 20 minutes, do the start when she had a bet on, when Moneypenny had a bet on, do that, and then move on to Silicon Valley. But that's my biggest issue was like, I thought he was a pretty forgettable villain, because I'm like, I spent most of the time going, what is you want the James Bond line. You want to hear Christopher Walken going, no, Mr. Bond, I want to hear you to die. Like, you want the lines. Whereas I was just like, what is this? What is he want to do?
It's a shame, because he's a very talented actor, and I know it was early on in his career, but they didn't give him a chance to be a Bond villain, really. And I think that's exactly, I completely agree with you. They didn't give him the opportunity to be able to do that, I don't think. They kind of almost just... He was too similar to James Bond, really. You know, how they both played it. There was no difference between them. You know, they were both this kind of smooth character, you know, trying to... And then he basically made Grace Jones do all the kind of Bond villain stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought it was quite a shame to him, really, because he's a very talented actor.
Yeah, totally agree. Yeah, I felt like he almost had to phone in a performance, because it was just, the script was so bad.
Yeah.
There were a few times I actually thought he was actually genuinely just laughing at the dialogue.
I actually noted that. I thought that. I completely agree with that.
Yeah.
I feel like there was a lot of telling and not showing with his character, because it's an awful, like, careful, he's a psychopath. Oh, by the way. He's a psychopath.
Yeah.
And he's this Nazi-born test tube baby, raised by the Russians, super soldier sort of guy. But it's Grace Jones is the ones that lifts people above her head.
No,
but it makes him a genius, you see, but psychotic.
That was it. It was the psychotic
did.
line. It's see when Bond was like, "Oh, he's a psychopath." I'm like, have we seen this yet? Have I missed something? It's only at the end when he's like just taking names with a machine gun at the end. I'm going, right, this is it, but give us that context.
We needed to have seen that, didn't we? Yeah.
That was the other thing. Like, see, when we got to that point, I'm going, mate, there's 7 minutes of this film left. And there's like, this is where we are. There's 7 minutes of this film left, and we've got so much more to wrap up in this 7 minutes.
Yeah. My favourite thing was when they said he had no accent. I was like, that's definitely just covering Chris Walker's ass. That's definitely just saying he can do what he likes. We're not going to say it's from anyone in particular.
Mr. Bond, please.
So we kind of mentioned there the horse plot, which was, as Andrew said, far too long. V, seeing as you're the greatest defender of this film, please defend the horse section for us.
Well, so the plot is that James Bond goes undercover to Zorin's estate, and this is where we find out that they're doing experiments. Well, they've obviously experimented, and now they're implanting microchips into horses, and these microchips, when activated, inject steroids. Right? So that they can win the race. Okay, which I think is very clever. And during this section of the film, this is where we get to learn a little bit more about like Zorin, as in what he's doing at the horse racing, and you get to see a little bit more of Grace Jones. And I think I liked this section of the movie because you got some kind of interaction between James Bond and Grace Jones, you know, where he'd just like try and chat her up, and she'd be just like giving him looks constantly. I think this is also like, this is the time where you get to hear a few kind of sleazy James Bond lines coming in. I think the one that I remember is where, like, the night after he slept with Grace Jones, Mayday in the movie, and like Christopher Walken's like, "You sleep well," and James Bond is like, "A little restless, but I got off eventually." So that sticks to my head. Classic. And you also get introduced to, like, I think this is the only woman in the film with a slightly dodgy name, Jenny Flex.
The only one. Yeah.
Yeah. Aside from the cat that you meet later on, that's called Pussy, which is a bird name in the film.
Just
yes. So you get a few one-liners there as well. Also, you also get to see the magnificent fight between James Bond and his partner, his equally old partner in crime. No, not crime actually, like sick stuff. Fighting with the guy in the factory place when they escape from the lab, and you know, it's so fast paced and it's so gritty. It's just like, it's unbelievable. You know, just
my note for that scene was Adam West level fight scene. That was straight out of 60s Batman. Like, it was so bad.
I could
almost needed the bang, didn't it? The Batman, you know, it needed that.
Aye, that's all you were waiting on.
Yeah.
The sound effects of the punches,
Yes.
the cut, I didn't even notice. It was like he punched him, and then it was like the punch was meant to go forward, but it ends up flying onto the conveyor belt to the left of him instead. Yeah. You know, it's like
there's
you can
one
tell they
point
had to
in that
like
scene.
stopping it, you know, just so that they could catch their breath after like one punch and like stop the scene and then start rolling again.
There was another edit that my wee brother picked up on, and I seen it as well. See the scene where he's about to sleep with Grace Jones, he does the bit where he kind of lifts the covers for it to get in.
Yeah.
And it literally
glitches,
and it was so strange. It was such a strange.
Yeah.
They've obviously done it, I think, just so that you don't see anything. But at the same time, I was like, it was so jarring.
Yeah, it was.
That also confused me massively because I was like, so they already know Bond snuck in, and so, but you, Christopher, you're just fine with your. I'm going to assume at the most a girlfriend, at the least assistant bodyguard you like to kiss and stuff. You're just gonna you're fine with Grace Jones just walking in and be like, we know we're gonna get him in the morning, we're gonna kill him in the morning, but go on, have some fun. On you go. This one's on me.
Bodyguard that you like to kiss and stuff.
You like to fight and then sexually
fight,
wrestle.
yes, fight, play fight.
Yeah.
So that blew my mind a little bit, but
yeah,
I was into it.
You see, apparently the reason why it's such a harsh edit on that bed scene, apparently according to Roger Moore's autobiography, they hated each other, and I mean they detested each other, but they could not stand each other. And apparently, I think it stems from, I don't know if it stems from this, but certainly one thing that happened on set was that Roger Moore was apparently known for pranking the Bond woman in the films. Grace Jones knew this ahead of time and thought, you know what? I'm going to get Roger. I'm going to get him. So in that bed scene, she has hidden a black dildo and essentially in the bed uses the black dildo. So that is and to give Roger Moore a fright, essentially, is what I'm trying to say. So essentially that was apparently something that happened on set, and yes, they did not enjoy each other's company. And apparently also Tanya Roberts, who played the main Bond woman in the film, she was apparently very difficult to work with as well. Apparently very difficult as well. So yeah, Roger Moore didn't have a very fun time on his last Bond film, unfortunately. He actually also said it was his least favourite of all the Bond films he did. I can imagine why. But yeah. My favourite moment of the horse stuff was the morning after, when he gets chased in the ride out. And it's like it's all been set in motion and planned. Like, did you engineer this overnight? So it's like do all the like moving the hedges and making them higher. It's like, is this something that you have just in general so that you can, like, if you have any enemies come round for tea the next morning, just take them around and just do the whole thing? Like, it does every time. I just couldn't cope with that bit at all.
It was just during that bit though, that was one of the bits I actually enjoyed was so obviously I've talked about Jaws and Odd Job. I like the fact that they had significant Jaws of the teeth, Odd Job with the hat. I like the fact that Grace Jones's thing was, I'm going to sneak in your car and choke you. I loved that shit, man. I thought that was so good.
One of my notes was any of Bond's pals shouldn't get in a car alone, because that happens twice.
I don't think it was quite random though. See, obviously, but it was the first time we seen her do it. But I'm like, why the fuck are we watching this guy get his car washed? What is this movie's already 9 hours too long? And then obviously you get the joke, which was awesome.
I thought it was brilliant how, like you say, it was all planned, for the hedges to move, everything, move the gates so everyone can, and the car be exactly in the right place for him to have escaped. So it's like, well, so you didn't plan to kill him on the hedges or him to come off. You actually planned for him to get to his own car. So Grace Jones was there ready.
Exactly.
Okay, that's genius.
I didn't even think about that. Oh no.
And ruined. Sorry.
Oh, no. Maybe to show his genius. Maybe to show his genius, he's got a contingency plan in place in case he made it past all that. We've got something else to get you in the end. Oh, that's amazing. I didn't even think about that. Awesome. Right, okay. Before we talk about the climax of the film and San Francisco and all these bits, let's play our other game. Okay, so this game, it's a word, Paul, for the game that's been sweeping the nation by storm. Here we go. The game is Line. Tagline.
The gamer's line. Tagline. Very good. So I'm going to give you the name of a Bond film, and then I'm going to give you 3 options, A, B, or C, and you have to tell me which one you think is the genuine tagline to that film. So we're going to start things off with Goldfinger. So, is it A, everything he touches turns to excitement? Is it
Sorry, Paul. Oh, sorry, carry on.
Is it B, it's finger-licking gold? Or is it C, watch out, he's got the golden touch?
Okay, I know this one. I do. Those first two Paul are absolutely genius.
Did you come up with them?
I did, yes.
I love it.
C is the answer, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, the answer is actually A.
No, it's not.
I went and checked these posters out myself. The answer
Oh my
is
God,
A.
Paul, you're so good at this game.
No, it's
Turns
not.
to excitement.
That's ridiculous. Oh my God, I'm so sure.
So good at this game, man.
Next up, we've got Moonraker. Okay, so is it A, one small step for Bond, one giant leap to the moon? Is it B, it's Bond, space Bond? Or is it C, where all the other Bonds end, this one begins?
I don't know. I actually don't know.
Ridiculous.
I think it's the first one. I think it's the first one.
I'm going to go B.
If it's
C.
B, that's amazing.
I'm going to go A.
A, B, what'd you say, V?
C.
C, what are you saying, Craig?
I'm saying A.
It's C, where all other Bonds end, this one begins.
Wait, yours were better?
Wow.
And finally, we come to Octopussy.
Yeah.
Is it A, this kitty has tentacles? Is it B, nobody does him better?
Oh, man.
Or is it C, 8 times the danger, 8 times the pussy?
Any one of those. Any one of those. Brilliant.
I'm going to go B.
I'll go.
B.
I'll go A.
I don't know. I think it could be A, but I want it to be C so badly. I'm going to go C just because I want it to be true.
Excellent. The answer, MV?
A.
A? The answer is B. Nobody does him better. I think that's because that was maybe the song for
The
Octopussy.
song, yeah. Nobody, yeah.
Oh, that doesn't make sense.
I was thinking that one. Oh.
I'm not entirely sure if anyone won there.
Oh, Paul's the winner.
I don't think I've
Paul's
ever been
always the winner.
disappointed at winning a game because, mate, that's your calling. Your tagline is phenomenal. So good, man.
Absolutely love it. It's so good, Paul. It's so good. I can't wait. I can't wait for the midsummer one, Paul. I mean, I don't know how you think that one funny. can't
I'll
wait
have
for
to have
that.
a think on that one.
Yeah. Right then. So back to A View to a Kill. We are now reaching towards the end of the film, and we're going to San Francisco. We've met up with Tanya Roberts. We've met up with the Bond woman of the film. Again, far too late in my opinion. I think we're an hour in before we actually meet her. But we meet up with Tanya Roberts. We go off to San Francisco to try and work out Zoran's plot, even though we as the audience already know it because of the plane scene. And by the way, I would have loved the careers convention being able to be a bad guy map designer. That's a very lucrative job, I would say. that would have been a great job to have. So we know what's happening. So we're just slowly watching slow James Bond work this out. What did we think of the whole San Francisco part? The fire truck, all that bit.
This is where my notes became quite infrequent, and I think the biggest note that I got from pretty much the plan to the end is it very much became an episode of Some Mothers Do Have Them. Like, see the scene where he's on the fire truck and he's like swinging from side to side, and then the same way like the blimp, and then I was just like, right, it's becoming farce that it's not Sean Connery suave James Bond. Even the earlier Roger Moore ones had more like suaveness to it, whereas this, I'm like, mate, you look like a goofy old man. I'm just waiting on him going, ooh, Betty, swing me back. I was like, that's so weird. And then the other thing I wrote was when he was talking about what the effect will be of the explosion, he said double earthquake, which I was like, oh, for fuck's sake, man, just I gave up. I gave up at this point.
Apart, the only stunt that Roger Moore actually properly did was driving the fire truck, apparently.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So, because apparently he used to drive lorries back in the day, so he drove the fire truck. That's the one thing he actually did. But I mean, quite selfishly, I might add, because there's an active fire on the go. You're stealing a fire truck, so I mean, it's a bit selfish on his part. The bit I loved most, did everyone else notice the homeless guy?
Yes, with the wine.
Oh,
That was so good. Because for no reason we're seeing his point of view. We get a swap to his point of view. Like, we know Bond saved her. We know, like, there's no jeopardy in it. We know he's got her. But we switch to this homeless guy, and it was the bit that got me the most was his face, because his face, the actor pulled the face. It was like, I'm inspired. I'm going to clean up my act. I'm going to drive. I'm going to get rid of the alcohol. I'm going to go get a job. And my life has been changed by this moment. It made no sense.
there was a random couple as well, like when they were in the fire truck and he knocks the top of a lorry off or something, a truck, and there's two naked people like shagging him there.
Oh yeah, in the truck.
This is what I'm saying. It's literally an episode of Some Mothers Do Have Them. I'm like, why was that there?
I can't quite remember. I think this came just before San Francisco. I have to mention one of my favourite scenes in the whole movie is the meeting on the blimp, and the one guy that doesn't want to be a part of it. He says, yeah, that's fine. Yeah, we've got a lounge. You can sit in the lounge. It's just down the stairs. Beep.
That's James Bond. What? That's like, down, open the hatch. That's James Bond.
I burst out. That is my favourite moment in the whole film. I burst out laughing. I was like, I want a slide that like flies people out of blimps. That's amazing. Like,
Didn't Zorin say like, oh, does anybody else want to drop out?
Yeah. That's a good line.
Yeah.
That's a James Bond line. That's a good line.
And also, it's like, that just looked quite fun. Did he die, or did he,
that was my question, was with him and Zorin, like, would they have died from that fall? Like, genuine question, would they have died from that?
When you fall from that height into water, it is pretty much the same as hitting concrete. So I want to say no for James Bond, but in reality, I'm thinking he did.
How good would a post-credit scene be if this guy like swimming to shore?
I was waiting on seeing Zorin like float up, going sequel.
I mean, they should bring him back for the new one, shouldn't they? With Daniel Craig. I mean, there's no reason why they couldn't do things like that, because there's no reason why he was killed. You didn't see it, so it would be quite genius to actually do something like that.
I think the parts that stuck out for me as well were when, like, Tanya Roberts, I think she was called Stacey Sutton. Yeah, she keeps on getting into awkward situations with, like, on scaffolding or a bridge or something, and James Bond keeps on shouting really obvious stuff to her, like, stay there, get a foothold, grab on, grab this. And you're like, duh, where's she going to go?
I like that she was...
Like...
I like that she was the original Bryce Dallas Howard as well, with the high heels, like she's climbing like scaffolding while.
Yeah.
I didn't realise as well.
One of my favourite parts was when, you know, they fought off the bad guys in her house, you know, and literally within seconds she's like, "You hungry?" You know, we're in the kitchen and
he made her quiche. He made her quiche.
She got changed as well, you know. She's gonna spruce herself up.
The shattered my dad's priceless vase as well, and
yeah.
And then they have that
for some quiche.
Yeah.
They have that romantic evening, like where they bond, and there's Bond, and like and then the next morning, that night, she's going to bed and she's lying in a bed or something like that.
Yeah.
It's like putting the sheet on her, and she's just like, it's just so tacky.
It was like her dad tucking her in, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It made it creepier. It was like, you're right, his dad tucking her in. Oh, it's made it worse. Right. That's it for part 2. Join us for part 3 when we talk about the climax, no pun intended, of this film, and we talk to Steve all about his upcoming projects. See you soon. Welcome back to part 3, where we're talking all about A View to a Kill. So, the climax. Every good James Bond film has a good climax. Do we think that this film stuck its landing? What do we think? Oh, but anybody can answer.
No. No, I think we were all going to say it, weren't we? Yeah. Even it just didn't work, did it? I don't think it kind of it would have worked if the film was a lot shorter. I think to have ended like that, but it was almost like they'd run out of time. They'd spent all this time on, you know, the horses and this and different kind of things that didn't matter. That it almost was like they went, we've got like 7 minutes to wrap this up. Let's just bung this here quickly and put it on a bridge. You know, it kind of, for me, it didn't work.
I completely agree with Steve. I think realistically, you could probably cut and chop like 20-minute segments out and push them together, and you get a quality Bond movie. I just think there was so much filler, and because that's it. Even there's things that like we barely touched on was like the bit in Stacey Sutton's house. There's loads that we've barely spoke about, but it's just because there's so much crammed into this 2 hours that you try and touch upon everything. So I completely agree with Steve. I think there are bits that are good, but I think there's just so much going on that it kind of takes away from the good bits.
Yeah.
I think that sort of jarred with me was that Zorin ends up dying before his like Nazi dad does, and then he's like, he sort of just comes and starts shooting at him. Like, but kill him first, in somewhere, or he and then the blimp explodes. You know, I'm like, either have Zorin on the blimp and it explodes, or something. Don't do it this way where the main villain dies and we've still got this old guy with a gun to beat up. I'm like,
that's just Roger Moore.
That's a bit jarring for me. Well, I think that the ending was really strong in that, you know, there was the Chekhov's gun. We saw the little robot. He was in the shower. Q did perv on him. He did do that. So, and then, you know, it wraps up in the most James Bond way ever. He's like, I'm in the shower. I'm with this beautiful woman. We're together. He's watching me. I don't care. I'm just going to throw a towel on it. There we go. James Bond. There's your movie. And it literally does just go.
Yeah, but
it's the way they kind of sink down under the shower curtain as well, you know.
Yeah, that was weird.
The ending made absolutely no sense because it was such a jarring cut to that second thing is that we've got the Doctor come back, but right, this is what the Secret Service, right? So they're thinking, we can't find Bond. We can't find Bond. What should we do? I know. Send in the robot dog. He'll sort it out. You'll find Bond for us.
How did the dog get there? I mean,
yeah. Surely
How did they
fly
get
it
that?
over?
That's-
No.
I'd like to touch upon. I like as well. I like the way that Grace Jones went out. I did like that. Was one thing that I liked as well. I liked the chemistry between Christopher Walken and Grace Jones' character. So when you get to the point where he kind of, you do see the psychopath come out in him, and he just leaves all these people to die and beat it. And then, but the one thing that caught me was like, I might be wrong in this, right? I might have seen this completely wrong. See the bomb. Was it 3,600 seconds? It was a really obscure time. I thought, why is it 36 minutes? Like it's really precise.
No, the seconds were ticking down. It said 94, 93 seconds.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Because I'm sitting going, I was like, surely I've seen, like, because I wrote the note and then I went, I'm going to say this, and they're going to go, no, actually, Andrew, it was blah, blah, blah. But no, it was just a bizarre backwards bomb. But I did like that she was like, no, I need to hold the break, and she went out, and they kind of locked. That was quite a cool moment. And then Roger Moore kind of, old man stumbles out, and he's like, oh, God. And then we went back to some mothers do have him on the blimp.
I don't know. I think I would have liked to have seen a bit of a fight between Grace Jones and Roger Moore at the end.
Yeah.
I think that would have been a good ending.
Would you though?
Just
Would
them
you want
dueling.
to be Batman jump cut fight between
Exactly.
Roger Moore and Grace Jones?
Bam.
Wham! Bam!
Been great.
The best fun fact from this film, or not really a fun fact, it's just a statement about the plot. So the plot of this film apparently makes, well, we know it makes utterly no sense, but actually, genuinely, scientifically, and logically makes utterly no sense. So apparently there was an interview with an expert about Christopher Walken's, Max Zorn's evil plan. Now, remember, bear in mind, this guy's a genius. This guy's supposed to be a genius, right? So he wants to create a monopoly of microchips, like an empire where he's in control of all the distributions of all the microchips. So his plot is to destroy Silicon Valley. Now, apparently, Silicon Valley doesn't have anything to do with that. They're actually the buyers. So what Matt Zorn is doing is actually destroying his whole market.
He's essentially trying to kill Facebook and Twitter before they even existed. That's all Silicon Valley is.
He's a real hero. Then. He's a real hero.
I did have another. If we're going to talk science as well, I did have an issue. Like, see when his monocle henchman decided, like, oh, the best way to beat somebody on a bridge. My dad pointed this out as well, is 6 sticks of dynamite, and he's going like, what? He's going to throw that, and then it'll fall. He's not going to hit James Bond. Why did the blimp not blow up? Are they not?
Yeah. Yeah, it was just the bottom half,
and then it just
yeah.
like dissolved like a fucking balloon. I was just like, oh, just give me something to make me go, yes, I like that. And even the fucking science let me down.
Apparently, it takes as well 24 hours to fill it up, the actual balloon. So when they're actually going, they go in that little shed thing, and they like go in, and it goes, and this thing just starts coming out, and starts getting inflated just like that.
Right.
Another thing was sorry.
No, you go on.
Another thing was Dolph Lundgren's role was never actually supposed to be in the movie, was it?
Yeah.
I quite liked that.
He was his boyfriend. Sorry, he was Grace Jones' boyfriend. Yeah.
Yeah, and I really liked that because obviously he went on to do huge stuff after that. So it kind of was, was that where it started? You just don't know really for him.
Yeah, suppose, you never know. But you make contacts on sets, don't you? And just kind of told you, maybe it was, for sure. Right, before we move on to our Q&A session, can we all just very quickly say, would we recommend this film? If we were going to ask someone else to watch this film, would we recommend it? I'll start with V, seeing it's your episode, V. Would you recommend the film?
Yes, 100%. It's a fantastic film with a fantastic soundtrack. Nothing else to say.
Fair enough. Paul, what about you?
Do you have a spare 2 hours of your life to sit and watch a wild roller coaster of a ride with a 57-year-old man at the head of it? Then if you do, then I recommend this film for you. Because, oh boy, you're going to get what you bought for.
Andrew? Yeah, you recommend it? Andrew?
I've got this thing where I like to think that I only recommend good movies, so going on that, I can't, but there is a big part of me that I want other people to experience it, because it's... You said 2 hours, I'm going, no, it's 2 hours and fucking 7 minutes. I counted every bastard in one of them. The last 7 minutes is where the ending of the plot happens. But no, do you know what? I would recommend people watch it, because I think there is a good James Bond movie in there. Just sift through the shite.
Yeah. Steve, what about you?
You just want to torture people for 2 hours, 7 minutes, don't you?
Exactly.
You had to, so same as everyone else, yeah. No, I would recommend it because I'm a James Bond fan, and I think, to know the brand and the history of it, you would need to see them all, I think. So yeah, I would recommend it, even though it's not the greatest movie, and it's definitely by far, not the best James Bond movie. But I think it's important to watch them all so that you see the whole thing, I think.
I'm a very strong hell no for this one. I lost my goddamn mind watching this film. I think I've been this angry in a long time, like talking about a film for pure. Just purely because I was such a massive James Bond fan. It was like someone was stomping on my childhood. I think that's how I felt about this one. So yeah, it's a no for me. But hey, if you like this sort of thing, if you like watching these kind of films, it's like so bad it's good, all these sort of things, then feel free. Right, Steve, thanks so much for joining us to help us with this film. So hey, now you've earned the right, I think, this week to talk about your stuff too. So let's start by talking about Isolation, the series. So tell everyone where this idea came from.
Okay, so Isolation, the series came during the first lockdown, and it started as it didn't start as a series. Basically, I kind of woke up. I knew everybody else was out there. Obviously there wasn't any auditions, and casting directors were doing, one-to-one meetings on Zoom and things like this. And I thought that was a great idea because they were giving up their time for this. Like every other actor in the country, was on my computer trying to get one of the slots, and it was just impossible. And for me, I needed to keep creative. So I kind of just basically tried to sit there and think of ways that I could keep creative, even if it was just for me, to get me through lockdown. So I woke up one morning and I kind of had a bit of an idea, and it kind of just came to me when I woke up, and I rang a friend who was isolating in Newcastle at the time. And obviously I was down in Essex, and he's a good friend of mine. We've been friends for years. So he kind of trusted me, and I just said, look, I've got an idea. I want to film something. I don't have a script. I don't know what it is, but I'm going to send something over in about an hour. And what I want to try and do, I'm not an editor. I've never edited anything in my life before this. What I want to kind of do is put us together into a scene and just see what it looks like. See if we can make it look like we're in the same place. Well, once I'd kind of done that, I just started to think of other scenes that could be quite clever to do this. And with that, he sent it back to me about an hour later. I literally got off the phone to him, wrote this scene, sent it to him, and then it came back to me. So I started putting it together, and I just thought, wouldn't it be nice to get, a few more actors just to keep everyone occupied, kind of thing. And it just snowballed from there, really. I think once I'd kind of done the first episode and messages, and it was very few messages at the beginning, started coming through saying, this is really great. I'd love to do one as well. From there, it just kind of grew into Isolation, the series.
Yeah, and as you say, it snowballed. It didn't half snowball, man. It just completely blew up. I mean,
yeah.
You've got Matt Lucas and stuff involved. So were you expecting it to go this massive?
No, never. Like I say, selfishly, I probably started it to keep myself kind of busy and focused on something. It was only once, I was a couple of episodes in, and I was starting to get messages from you know, from people all over the world saying, "Oh, I'd love to be part of this." It just kind of felt right. I never expected it, but it was so nice, and everyone went above and beyond, which made the series what it was. You know, it kind of, each episode myself, I could see it growing, and I didn't know where I was going with it. I didn't know whether it was going to be a storyline or whether it was going to be sketches at the time, you know, because it had never been done before. I was kind of finding my own feet as I was going along. So from week to week, I didn't even know what the next scripts were going to be. You know, on the Monday, I was getting up and writing kind of 16 scripts, because everybody's part had to be so different, because it had to have all their direction on it as well. So yeah, it kind of, it started to make sense after a few weeks in my head, kind of.
Yeah, and you know, it's so important that, you know, being able, as you're saying, being able to stay creative, especially now. So, why do you think this show really gives that to the actors? Why do you think this show is so important for everyone right now, especially?
Do you know what? It's a good question. It's one that I've asked myself as well. I kind of sat there and wondered, why are people wanting to be involved? You know, I was getting messages from not just kind of actors that I knew, but like I say, actors from all over the world. I was getting messages from sort of big names as well that were saying, "This is amazing. You know, I want to be part of this." And I think because it allows us to keep creative, you know, whether no one earned any money, no one was getting paid for the first series, you know, it was all because we love what we do. And I think because everyone came together and was so nice, and, you know, I didn't get any negative feedback. And that was because of what everyone was doing and how much everyone was getting behind it. And I think that was so important, because I actually had an actor on Twitter who was in the first series, and I don't know this actor, and I see that he'd tweeted and he'd struggled with his mental health at the beginning of lockdown, and he wasn't getting any auditions like all of us, but he was really struggling with that. And for me, that was important to get him on board. And he actually said that was getting him through lockdown, was being able to be part of the series. And that happened quite a few times. And for me, that was important, because, you know, we're all in this together. That's the reality. Normally, when we're not in lockdown, I get frustrated when I don't get certain auditions, or I haven't been seen by a casting director for 15 years that I've been applying for, you know, and things like that. But with this, it feels like almost like a family. I know that sounds quite cheesy, but it does. And everyone kind of felt that. And I think that's why it was so important to keep it going, to be honest.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, yeah, obviously, like everyone who's in this industry, we do it because we like to be out and about and on set and doing this. So yeah, to go from that to be stuck in your house, I suppose, yeah, of course, your mental health can be affected. You know, you want to be out and about, and if you're not getting anything coming in either that's giving you hope for what's happening after, then yeah, it's going to suffer. So having something like this, I think, must have been absolutely amazing for everyone who was involved, and actually just for everyone who was watching as well, just to see it happening as well, and seeing that people were still being creative. It probably gave the audience as well a lot of hope too. So definitely, it was a great thing to have done. And you're just started series 2 now, and where do you kind of see the show going after that?
Yeah, so I've taken my time on the second series. The first series to me was quite important to get out there, just to show that, you know, we are doing something very unique. It's not been done before, and it was picked up by quite a lot of people that wanted the show on their format. And for me, it was important to keep it, you know, to not give it to anyone else, to be honest, because, like I say, it did feel like a family. Everyone did the first series because they loved doing it. So when it came to, and I had so many messages, I thought, to be honest, it was just going to be a one-off kind of thing because of the lockdown. And it seems that it's the complete opposite, because I'm getting so many messages, even now, still saying, please tell me you are doing a second season. So for me, it was important that if we were going to do a second series, that we grew. So one, I wanted to pay people for their time. You know, I'm an actor myself, and it is for the love, but at the end of the day, we still need to earn a living. And I'm completely against doing things for free if somebody else could earn some money. So for me, it was important that, even though it might not be a lot at the start, if we can pay actors and creatives, then to me, that's, you know, it's worth going for as long as it can. But what I struggled with was, I wanted the show to have a format now. So I've, along with Anto, who's an incredible writer who was in the first series, I've asked him to come on board and write the second series with me. So we've had hours and hours worth of Zoom chats and things, and we've come up with a nice formula that it's almost like a live Scooby-Doo. That's how I would explain each episode. You know, each episode is a standalone. It's still going to have the original characters, but we can then bring on guest characters. And, you know, so for me, the second series is going to change from what the first one was, but I think for the better as well. And I think it will make a lot more sense.
That sounds great. Yeah, sounds absolutely great. Yeah, so, and for people wanting to get involved in stuff, is it just on Twitter? Do you post about it, and that's how you kind of get involved?
Yeah, I'm kind of I'll be putting out castings through Twitter and things. The nice thing about the first series was I didn't audition anyone. You know, I didn't look at any. Obviously, I looked at headshots, so I knew what somebody looks like, but I didn't judge anyone on any ability or anything. I just kind of wanted everyone involved. I want to take the same approach with the second one as well. You know, I want people that want to be involved, and I think I will definitely put out castings and things, and there is going to be more, not an audition process, but there is definitely going to be that, because I want to step it up as well. You know, I now need to audition people that are right for each character, instead of me saying, right, I'd like that person and I'll write a scene around them, which was what the first series was. Now we have our characters, and it's now about bringing in the right people to play them characters.
Yeah, definitely. You've also got a fantastic short film, Becoming Everything, to talk about. So can you tell us a bit about that film as well?
Yeah, so this has been a process over the last few years. Becoming Everything is really important to me. It's and it's not something I've gone through at all. It's about the struggles that a widowed father would go through after losing his wife. And having to become a mother to their daughter as well as a father. Now, the film is not an easy watch. It's really not. It's probably easier than A View to Kill, to be honest. But but it's not an easy watch. You know, it will definitely make you think, and that's what we want, because what we're trying to highlight here is somebody that's going through, you know, he's struggling with his mental health, basically. On the inside, on the outside, no one else might know this apart from the people that are close to him. This was a film that I started writing a couple of years ago. We started to fundraise for it about 2 days before lockdown hit, which the timing was unbelievable. And because we started raising money within the first 2 days, it really took off quite quickly. Of course, lockdown started and it just stopped. And I asked the website who I was kind of raising the money through, could we pause this until the end of lockdown? And they just said, no, you've got 30 days to raise your money. Of course, that wasn't possible. I had an amazing executive producer come on board, Emmy Lentino, who is in New Zealand, and she believed in the project. It got to the point where I was going to have to put it on hold again, because I didn't raise the funds I needed. And I was speaking to the director, who's a good friend of mine, and I just said, you know what, we need to do this more than ever, because due to COVID, more families are now going through this exact situation, you know, all over the world. So for me, it was so important that we went ahead. So I just said, you know what, I don't have it, but I don't care how I find it. I'm going to fund it myself. And we did. We came out of lockdown, we filmed it. We're on the final edit now. And I have to say, I'm really critical, especially of my own work. Not as an actor, I'm not looking at it from that side of things, but more just the whole film as a general. And I'm blown away, to be honest. I really am. I hope everyone else is. And that's not very often I would say that about my own work. But it's not because of what I've done, it's because of what the whole team done. Again, working around COVID, you know, wasn't the easiest thing. It took, I think, 6 or 7 weeks just to get the kid license to be able to film. And I had so many friends in the industry that were saying, it's impossible to get a license at the moment. We don't actually know how you've got this. There are massive productions that aren't getting the license. So yeah, I'm pretty excited about getting it out there now. Nervous.
Do you plan on releasing it out in the festivals and the festival circuit? Is that where you want to kind of?
Yeah, that's exactly where we're kind of going with it. And I've been advised to go to some of the big festivals. You know, originally I was going to kind of start with some of the local ones and see how people felt about it. But after watching it and having some advice from industry people, they're like, this needs to be in all the biggest festivals now. And also because there's not a lot of productions going on right now, it makes it even more important to get this out, because companies are crying out for footage and things. So hopefully that kind of lends a bit of a helping hand for ours as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're right. There hasn't, there's a big void that's, that you're able to get something out there, because everyone's craving for content, and especially if you've got something that's going to be resonate with people, like you said, it'd be great to get out, especially in these times, for sure. Well, Steve, we wish you all the best with
Thank you very much,
and we thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been great having you on the show, and I hope you enjoyed yourself with a view to.
I've loved it. Thank you so much for having me. It's been great to meet all you guys as well.
Thank you very much. So,
thank you.
Yeah. I also want to thank, of course, Paul, Andrew, and Vanashri for joining me as well. And always, we finish with our life lesson from the film. So, I've got a few this time. So, number one, if you're closer in age to a bus pass than the mother of the bondwoman that you're making out with, maybe it's time to hang up the tuxedo. Number two, if your partner works for a rich megalomaniac, maybe take out a life insurance policy before they head off to work. And number three, never leave a meeting early. Don't be rude, because you never know who has a button that might slide you out of a blimp. See you next time.